Okay.
Ready to go?
Have to go with it, yeah.
Okay. Next item is number 11, update from Nancy Maynard, private citizen on the Ellsworth Air Force Base PFOA contamination. Are you going to introduce this, Steve?
Yeah, Nancy, you want to just introduce yourself and let us know what you're here to provide us with.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, directors, for listening. We're in
Could I ask you to get a little closer to the
I sure
microphone?
can.
And just introduce yourself too, so we get you on the record.
Nancy Maynard.
Okay, thank you.
School bus driver, landowner, whatever, yeah. I thank you guys. We're in a unique situation. We are just off the runway of Ellsworth Air Force Base where Westgate Road and Country Road are. We found out last year in October that our private wells were contaminated with PFOA and PFOS, which basically is Teflon from firefighting foam. The base started using it, I believe, in the late 2000s, and it is wonderful for putting out fires. However, it soaks into the ground and contaminates the water. And they knew this in 2010, 11, and 12. We found out about it in 2018, and when they came and started testing our water, and we range from really, really high in my well to extremely high. The next well and the well next to it within 500 feet has nothing. We were approached by the base, and Melody Jensen at the time was in charge of the base project manager for the water, and we had meetings, and they said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to test your water, and right now we're going to deliver you water. We get bottled water every Thursday from Coca-Cola, 6 cases, basically a gallon of water a day for cooking. We are not to ingest it. They said we can bathe in it, use it for different things, just not ingest it. We had a gentleman from the EPA toxicology in Colorado, Brian Benson, and he told us, do not take a shower longer than 2 minutes. Don't water your plants, don't water for garden. Don't water your garden, don't eat anything out of your garden, and do not water your animals with it. So we have been trying to go through the list of filtration systems. They presented us with reverse osmosis, the carbon activated, the GAC system they call it, and an ion system. And each one of these we're finding out is our well may be at one corner, our septic tank is maybe 600 or more feet away, and we haven't figured out how they're going to get the water from our point of entry where the filter is to our septic system, and what it's going to flood, it's going to overfill our septic systems. We've also asked to go into the city of Box Elder if they would provide us water. The city of Box Elder does not want us. They have a moratorium on any outside the city limit users. So on Country Road, which goes east and west, less than 200 feet from Country Road, there is a base water line that provides water to the base. We have asked the possibility of hooking into that, and we're told no because it would decrease the pressure. We also mentioned pump station or pit or pressure, whatever it would take. They again said no. However, I'm going to stop right there because on the north side of Country Road and Westgate, there are approximately 10 to 15 homes. Their water was contaminated by base runoff back in the 70s and 80s, and they were hooked up to the city, they were hooked up to Pactola water that runs to the base, and they are provided free water. And we talked to Box Elder, and they said if Box Elder took us, being we're outside the city limits, we would need to pay double rates as an out-of-city user. Well, The youngest one in our neighborhood is 55. The oldest one is 88. And that, some of their bills are running $180 in the winter to $300 in the summer, which.
Per month?
Per month, yes. And there is a tap 3 houses down from me, which would be maybe 2,500 feet, quarter of a mile, less than a quarter of a mile. That is the last house they will hook up because it takes 20 seconds to fill a bottle of water, and they said they can't hook any more people in that area, even if it was an option. We're just looking for help. We have exhausted, we've called, I believe I called Nathan, I have called, we signed all kinds of release forms with every politician that was up for election in October. I called Dan. They all jumped up and helped us till they got elected, and we pretty much have been sitting now waiting. The Melody Jensen, who is the lady on the base, has taken in a job in a different area. They brought in 2 new people, and as of March 19th, our last meeting, we have not heard from anyone. The base, if you go to your agenda or to the packet, I'm on pages 22 to page 34. They have sent us a right of entry access that they want us to sign, so they have access to our property so they can come put this filtration system in. However, I don't have a contract, and I'm a little leery of granting access to my property without a contract on the filtration system. What are they gonna do? I am concerned, I have a concrete vault pump pit. They're talking about putting 85-pound cylinders in there. If they drop it and crack the floor, I kind of have a concern about who's going to do that. I personally cannot lift the lid and go down to check it to see how it's doing. They've said they will come check it periodically. I cannot get a timeline on that. If it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever they said as needed. I have some concerns about that. We don't know. We're just looking for help and pointing in directions.
Are they gonna operate and maintain these individual systems in their homes, the Air Force
Well,
or government?
they say that, but they won't. I need a contract.
That's right.
I need to know who's coming in the house. I have the vault. Sandy Clary, who lives next door to me at 720 Halsey Drive, I own the land. They've leased from me since 1987, and they don't have a vault on their property. And the water table's pretty high, and I don't think we can install a vault. If they install it in their house, it's going to take up a closet from what we understand. The dimensions, according to the pictures there, it'll take up the closet, and then they can only use it inside the house. They can't use it for the gardens. And we both, as is most of the neighborhood, are big gardeners. Most of our produce is
Mr. Chairman, can I comment on
Sure.
some of this? I've been following this very closely. So I think the way the Air Force is looking at this is they're looking at the provision of water or treatment of water on site as a stopgap. I think long-term what they want to do is they want the city of Box Elder to be able to extend their system out to serve these areas that are impacted. The problem is that the city of Box Elder does not have the capacity right now to serve people outside the city limits. So there's a moratorium that the city has on providing water outside the city limits just because they don't have the capacity right now. The city is having to purchase water from Rapid City during the high use months. So around this time of the year typically. This is a unique year just because of all the water we've gotten. But I think the long-term solution to this is that the Air Force is going to have to help the the city of Box Elder develop the capacity to be able to provide water to the areas that are impacted by this problem. The problem with that is that it's going to take time to do that. So it's my understanding that the Air Force is working on that. The office that is responsible for that is called AFCEC. I noticed that you had some information from AFCEC. It's the Air Force Civil Engineering Center. The long-term solution to this is not cheap, and that's a big part of the problem. The wells in the Box Elder area are very deep, which means they're very expensive. So because of that, the Air Force, is looking at, they're already tapped.
Yes.
Because they've got all these other things hitting them. You mentioned in your write-up here that it's a national problem. It is a national problem. There are at least 15 Air Force bases that are in the exact same situation as Ellsworth. Maybe, we'll get some kind of priority because of our new missions that we're getting here, but who knows? And maybe, with that and maybe some political muscle, those funds could be, funneled our way. So my recommendation, for whatever it's worth, is talk to your legislative representatives in the area, tell them what you want, and in the meantime, do whatever you can do with Air Force to do the stopgap until the final solution can be achieved. But I think it's going to be a combination of everybody working together to try to get to where we need to be. And you being an impacted household, you'll have a big voice in that. So, like I said, I recommend you go to your local legislative offices and talk to them and tell them what your situation is and tell them what you would like to see ultimately, which is to get water from the city of Box Elder. Now, I'm guessing that to get water from the city of Box Elder, what may have to happen there is you may have to get annexed into the city. So I don't know what your feelings are about that, but you might want to give some thought to that and talk to your neighbors about that as well.
We have in the map, we have a drainage ditch behind our property that base constructed for the base for the runway runoff years ago. And it's my understanding that Box Elder doesn't want that stuff. First, they don't want it. They don't, I don't want to say this, but they don't want us just because of the area we're in. We are not, we would be a plus to anything they want to do. And we understand that. That's kind of kept us from going into Box Elder, and we have tried to do everything. Colonel Edwards was very receptive and came visit with us, but change of command, and right now we're gearing up for the new planes, and Box Elder's building 400 houses and digging a new well for those houses, and they have off the cuff told us it could be at least 12 to 15 years before we get water. And I'm old. Sorry.
So, and another concern too is a lot of the people are older people and cannot take on another big expense every month. And that was another concern too.
This is Sandy Clary. So, but thank you for listening and thank you for your help. Anything you can do, I appreciate it.
James has a question.
Yes, James.
I also agree with her. I think the government's contract as a 5-year rate of entry is ridiculous. After it's installed, is the military saying they're going to install it, or they're going to have a third-party contractor install it?
We can't find out. We don't know.
Because if there's a third-party contractor, they have no right to be on your property ever.
Acton, the company Acton, used to be Shaw. They're in the business of remediation. they're working at Pendleton, in Camp Pendleton in California. They did Stapleton. They did the remediation in the early 90s so they could build a flight simulator. And they're familiar with the area, but they keep changing their name. Now it's Acton, it was Shaw, then it was IT, it had some other names. And they're a good company, I don't mean to.
Yeah, but I see the government's contract, and they want 5 years permission to enter your property, which
I'm
I see
uncomfortable with
exactly why you're upset. Plus, they poisoned your water. They should just supply you with water and call it a day and think themselves lucky before you sue them for punitive, for not telling you for 8 years.
Yeah, I
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I agree with everything that Nathan said over there. You know, you're in a precarious position, and it's sad, and I wish the government step in and do something. But I agree with him. I think you should go down the channel of having them install the unit, because if you look at point 8, it says a right of entry may be terminated at any time by either party before the time of expiration specified by 30 days. So you have to have a written notice, and you can stop them. But they're going to have to come onto the property just to help you to see what you're going to need, and what you're talking about, the septic issue, when they come out there. That's something that you'll need to address, and I think James is right. It's probably going to be a third party that they're going to send out to do this. So, and they'll have to have the correct. So that's some of the questions that'll be answered, I think, at the time when you go to decide which units you have, because you're kind of in a really precarious position, and you really need to get some water. And I hope they continue to work with you, and like Nathan said, it's a long-term project. I was wondering, I talked to you earlier today, I was at Oklahoma when they bought out a bunch of properties down there outside Tinker Air Force Base. And that was one of the things that came to my mind, is would it be cheaper for them to do that versus go down to, and I'm sure they're going to be looking at all those avenues, but in the meantime, you need help now, and I think your only recourse, as of what Nathan said, is to go ahead and do this, and knowing, like I said on here, 30 days of notice and they're done, but they're going to need to come on there to help you.
But in some cases,
I have
there's nowhere to put it.
When we were talking before the meeting,
Yes.
and I mentioned it before, is the Air Force going to provide money for you to operate that system? Because I mean, it's different than,
No.
you have to pay for it yourself?
We have to pay for everything. They will provide everything. They will install it, and then any cost, because they wanted to install reverse osmosis, which takes 2 gallons of water, or 2 or 3 gallons to make one. And I said, well, you'll fill my septic tank up within a matter of a couple months. And they said, yes, you'd have to have it nice. Well, who's paying for that? And they said that would be, anything after that is my expense. They will install it, and then it's up to the landowner, homeowner.
I would
That's
think
our
that would be negotiable.
Right, that's not
Since,
right.
because if it's costing you more money to produce water than they're used to, they should be stepping to the plate on that.
And we can't find out from them with the filtration systems if our pumps are big enough to use it, because sometimes you need a higher horsepower pump, and I believe we all have 3/4 to 1 horsepower pumps, and they're saying we may require a 1 to 2 horsepower pump.
Figure out what that means.
And we would have to install that to make the filtration system. And there's so many variables that we can't get answers for.
I think those are some questions you need to probably try and get an answer for before they proceed.
Well, as you can see, with questions and answers, we keep asking, and
Yeah.
they attempt to answer, but I'm not getting black and white, yes and no. And I don't,
I know some of our board members have gone to those meetings. I know Bob has, and Nathan has, and maybe somebody else I haven't, but we're trying to, just from our board, to have some representatives at the meeting to see what's going on, because we understand it's a major issue for the folks. So, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that maybe when you're talking to them and negotiating, spell out what you want and what you need. And if you want to go with well, not reverse osmosis, but just the filter system, say, then you need to provide a pump that can operate the system. You know, if you spell it out, maybe they're not thinking of all these things. And then before you both sign, you know what you're going to get. And I think in the end, you will have better water quality than you had before the PFAS. At least, you know, in this short term until I think they can and will get you box elder water, because the base doesn't want to be in the water business either.
Nancy,
Steve had a question.
I've got one more question for you, Nancy. Now, when they install the system, of course, they use different filters and stuff for that.
Yes.
And the seconds you showed me talked about how often they need to replace that. Are they going to pay for the replacement of those filters? Those filters are very expensive.
They said they will install them, and I said, well, who's responsible for the filters? We are, and I said, does that mean you're gonna pay for them? Well, that'll have to be determined.
But they're responsible for them, I'm thinking, because just to let you know, that's something you want to make sure that's addressed, because I can tell you, I use a water filtration system just for my business. I'm talking small filters that are highly expensive. Yours, these here will be very expensive, so be very careful and make sure that you have that documented.
Nathan had another follow-up question.
Yeah, I was just going to make a couple
comment.
of comments. Director Harris, I think, made a good comment about water quality. RO systems that's pretty much the best water you can possibly get, short of what they call distillation, which is just pure water. But RO is almost pure water. So if you had an RO system installed, you would probably be happy with the water quality. Maybe not the expense, maybe not the other side effects of it, like all the wasted water, but you would have very high water quality. The other thing is I wanted to plant the seed. We've got an attorney in the room. There was and this was mentioned at one of the meetings at the base head, public meetings. There was a very large project that was done around, what is it, Peterson, that's in Colorado, Air Force Base, that had a significant PFAS, PFOA contamination issue that impacted the aquifers serving the city of Colorado Springs, and they ended up basically coming in and putting in almost a whole new water supply system. It was very expensive. What drove that was the threat of litigation, I believe. So if the Air Force, unfortunately, the world that we live in is it's kind of very Darwinian, right? Sometimes it takes power when you're talking to power, and if the Air Force is faced with a situation where they're going to either have to do a class action lawsuit to, or address that to solve an issue, or they just ante up, rather than do that, they pony up and fix the problem. I'm just throwing that out there. That was mentioned again at the last public meeting. They didn't mention the litigation part. That's just stuff that I did my own research on. So anyway, for whatever it's worth, I just want to let you know that.
A couple of attorneys have approached us, some from Illinois and also the ones from Colorado, and they told us that they came in and they said, we'll take over, we'll do this and that, but you're looking at 10 to 12 years before you get anything, and we're like, we're alive. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, our biological clock is ticking here, and we've talked to real estate people, and they said, a developer will come in and buy you out and tell you take everything off and sit on it till a later day when water comes to that end, and then they'll develop it. Or they will develop it and make mini storages that they don't need water. And, go ahead, sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just so what I would do if I were in your shoes is I would take a multi-pronged approach. make sure that you have your immediate needs taken care of in terms of the water that you need to live, and then be talking to your legislators. If you have attorneys that are interested, talk to them. See what it is that they have to say and evaluate things, and then go from there. If you've got multiple pings coming in from different places into the Air Force decision makers, that will help.
We have some unique situations. There's probably 6 retired military, and they've said, well, we're not gonna live that long, our kids are gonna take our property, so we don't care. And I said, well, that's fine, that's your choice. And they said, well, we draw retirement, we love the Air Force. We love the Air Force too.
Yep.
They're our family. We've been there, we've hauled their kids, they're family, that's how it is. We wanted them to stay here. We jumped up and did everything we could to make sure they're here. This is an unfortunate situation that we're in. And then we have others that say, oh, it doesn't matter because we're out of here in 2 more years. The place can sit empty. I'm in local South Dakota. Grew up 110 miles from here, Faith, South Dakota. So I'm not going anywhere. I just want to have water. But thank you very much for your answer.
James?
Have you contacted the big 3 legislatures, like Dusty, John Thune, and Mike Rounds?
Yes.
And no replies?
They came to the meetings back in November. They came in March, I believe. Haj was the only one that was there. You guys were there, but that was it.
I would suggest touching base with them again and let them know you hit a roadblock.
Okay.
And they'd be surprised how fast those guys get on the phone and go, hey, do you want your budget cut this year? Or how about you get these people water? Seriously, sometimes that's what it takes. Money makes the world go around. And if they get told, hey, we're giving you an extra $10 million or $100 million in your budget, you better make sure the people get water or you get nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and giving us an update on your situation. Appreciate it.
Chairman?
Yes.
I was going to say, Nancy, if you want to keep me informed on meetings and who's taking over, I can keep the board
All right.
and kind of track it.
Okay. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that was item 12, USGS Canyon Lake sampling update, and new contract for future sampling from Galen Hooverstrom. Jim?
Greetings.
All right.
Presentation of CF.
Dan sounded real enthused about that one.
I think we need to put a new laptop in Dan's arsenal. One that's going to play a video.
Okay, we got one PDF. PowerPoint. Tried to send you earlier, but it's a little too big file size to send on. We'll do it consistent. Okay, I'll have to, I can't go to presentation mode. Okay. Because of the lock. Well, that's fine. So, thank you, board.
Yeah. You ready, Dan?
You guys want to swing around at all, or if
Yeah.
you're situated?
You can turn off a light or two.
All right, very good.
Perfect.
Too much?
Nope, perfect.
That's good.
Okay, so I'm here today to give an update on what essentially wraps up an agreement, a funding request that we applied for in 2017, actually, and then also follow that up with another request to extend this out due to the various delays in the dredging. Scroll to the next slide. Good, just go down. Perfect. I just want to review our objectives and approach, what we had planned out, what we completed in this last 2.5 years. Go over a summary of the results. We've got all the water quality and stream flow information back from what we've done since then. And then talk a little what we've learned so far and talk about this next phase, if you will. So go to the next slide. Just again, as a reminder, kind of a couple different objectives here, it's not just tied to the dredging. Most of us are familiar with the planned dredging for Canyon Lake, which was initially planned to begin in 2017 due to some other unforeseen circumstances, delays in contracting, figuring out what to do with the sediment once they pull it out. Finally got those things sorted out, so now according to Game Fish and Parks, who's managing it, we're going to start this next upcoming fall. But again, we're not just talking about looking at pre and post dredging. That's obviously one major aspect of this. But we just want to evaluate water quality, figuring out does it meet current standards related to how the fishery is managed, how if it's suitable for swimming if people are in the water, and then look at things like the waterfowl population. Does the waterfowl population affect the water quality downstream to a big extent where it might be degrading the water quality, that sort of thing? There really wasn't much for bacteria data on Canyon Lake itself or immediately downstream prior to this 2017 start a couple of years ago. Go to the next slide. And this was just a slide from the original presentation a couple of years ago. These are the things we're trying to answer related to does the waterfowl affect water quality, and then getting into the dredging. Is this going to have, what's the dredging going to do to water quality? It's going to be a temporary thing where it stirs up the sediment and the nutrients and then just goes back to normal conditions. Or are we going to see some sort of long-term benefit to the water quality, water clarity, that sort of thing? Next slide. And this kind of goes back to the limited data availability. This shows the current DENR water quality monitoring sites. Linda might be familiar with some of these, of course. We've got Dark Canyon, a little bit above Canyon Lake, and then there's not really a long-term data set on Rapid Creek until you get below the city itself. So Canyon Lake's right here. We're not really sure. We don't have the data set to properly assess just the impact of Canyon Lake on what it does to Rapid Creek as it goes through this stretch here, which is the most used, most important part of Rapid Creek as it goes through the city. So that's a major objective of this, is just to get a better data set of figuring out what effect that has on how it's used through the rest of the city. Next slide. Okay, the sampling approach, sampling plan. On the right side of the screen, we've got a list of all our water quality constituents. And I will mention I sent this presentation to Dan here, so we can post this on the web. You can refer back to this if you're not taking notes tonight or something like that. So we can refer back to this later. All right, so we did 14 sampling visits between 2017 through 2019. Kind of stretched those out a little bit more than our initial plan was, something on the order of bi-monthly for 2 years. So I had to adjust that just because we kept getting some kind of word on the delays with the dredging. We weren't exactly sure how that was going to play out. So 14 sampling visits, 5 sampling locations. So we went Rapid Creek above, Canyon Lake north on the north side, kind of under the bridge. If you're familiar with Canyon Lake, the Rapid Creek flows in here across Chaplain Bridge. Most of it flows and gets deflected by this jetty, goes under the bridge, comes through here to the south, and over the dam. There's kind of a stagnant corner over here by the former lodge, where there's a lot of vegetation and have some undesirable waters over there that builds up. So we didn't have a sampling site over there during most of the water flows that way. So again, here's the water quality constituent list. Top of it was E. coli bacteria, total suspended solids, kind of like measure the sediment. Then this group here is what we call our nutrients, so ammonia, organic nitrogen, nitrate, nitrite, orthophosphorus, dissolved form of phosphorus, total phosphorus. Organic carbon and some chlorophylls are used to assess kind of the productivity of the lake or the algae system, that sort of thing. And then the bottom is our field measure parameters, temperature, pH, conductance, dissolved oxygen, Secchi disc. If you're a fisherman, you might be familiar with that. You drop this little disc down the water and you measure the depth where you can see it, so it's measuring water clarity. Most of the time, I don't present much data with the Secchi disc, but you can see almost all the way down to the bottom of the lake every time it does that. So, and turbidity is another measure of the amount of sediment. Okay, next slide. So I talked about beneficial uses, and those not familiar with that term, it's basically a standard that the DENR uses to assign a number onto water quality in the rivers and lakes in South Dakota. So Canyon Lake and Rapid Creek right below it have beneficial uses of domestic water supply, immersion recreation, and cold water permanent fisheries. So we're talking about the trout fishery. So this just lists, I'm going to mention, we can refer to this later. This is just off the state's administrative rules. It's all this numeric criteria for the various water quality constituents. So most of these are on the sample list. There's a couple that we don't have on, like we didn't stand for barium, it's like kind of metal, fluoride, sulfate. Those are usually things we don't have a problem with here in Rapid Creek. So I'll point out, let's see, for domestic water supply, so we're talking about drinking water. You'll see the total column, this is the bacteria count. That's actually a lot higher number or a less restrictive standard than it is for swimming, because the assumption is for drinking water supplies, you need to treat that with chlorine or something like that anyway, so you're not as concerned about having a lower bacteria count for that. The thing most interested on the slide is white nitrates, 10 milligrams per liter, so not really see quite a bit. Next slide. We talk about the cold water permanent fish propagation. So this is your trout fisheries. Important things for fisheries, we talk about ammonia, chlorides, dissolved oxygen, pH, total suspended solids, temperature. These are all pretty important things. So I'll just point out, total suspended solids, important number is 53 milligrams per liter in any sample. And I point out total ammonia is kind of dependent on pH and I think temperature or something like that. So that amounts to a standard about 3.5 or 3.8 milligrams per liter. Other one is dissolved oxygen, above 6 or 7 milligrams per liter. You'll see in the data that all of our samples are very high in dissolved oxygen, as far as trout fisheries are very low. Okay, next one. This is the immersion recreation standard. So E. coli is the big one here. The number here, keeping it back, is 235, measured in usually most probable number per 100 milliliters. So I can start looking through some of the bacteria data. 235 is the most restricted bacteria standard. Okay, that's all of our water quality kind of background and why we sampled for what we did. This kind of gets into the results. And if you want, I'll point out, if you look at this later as opposed to this posted, there's this little red link here. If you click on that, it brings up all the data on our databases. So if you wanted to get the raw data straight from the source, it's an ugly looking link, but it's all packaged in there. So you can click on that and get the raw data. So this is just a table of all of our information. These are 5 sites: Rapid City up, or Rapid Creek upstream side, north side of the lake, south side of the lake by the dam, Rapid Creek down. So in upstream and downstream order. You see some logical things like the water temperature increases as you go from upstream and downstream. Just point out dissolved oxygen is always about 10 to 11 milligrams per liter. Again, that's well above what we need to maintain a good trout fishery. Here's our average E. coli numbers. You see we're all in that less than 50 most probable number per 100 milliliter range. So that's compared to that 235 number. So we're very far under what we need for immersion recreation in Canyon Lake. Down here we've got some of the nutrient numbers. So total phosphorus, ammonium organic nitrogen, ammonia. You see a lot of less thans and a lot of 0.0 stuff. This is a good thing. Our nutrients are very low. Our nitrate plus nitrite, this is that 10 milligram per liter for a drinking water source. We're about 1/10 of a milligram per liter, so we're an order of 100 less than what we need to maintain a drinking water source there. These ones aren't, these are the chlorophyll numbers. Not really a standard on those, just kind of good for comparing versus other lakes and to see how productive it might be in terms of an ounce population. Question? Go ahead.
I don't mean to blow your mojo here, but
No, go for it. You just read it.
dissolved oxygen, do you have any theories on why it's dropping 1 milligram per liter approximately from the north side to the south side of the Canyon Lake?
Yeah, right there, the 10 to 7 to 9.8.
Stagnant water in the middle of the lake versus
Yeah.
bubbling creek.
That is an interesting one. I think it probably has something to do with, actually, let's go to, we can stay here, it's fine. Actually, go forward a slide, or go forward 2 slides, actually. That's something I actually hadn't noticed. So, this north site, that site has the highest nutrient concentration. And generally, that's where we got a lot of productivity. So there's a lot of this vegetation that's sucking up the carbon dioxide, putting off the oxygen. So then, perhaps to counteract that, the converse happens as it's farther downstream. You've got oxygen that's a little bit higher at this point. It mixes, it kind of reaches and stabilizes, gets back to the rest of the system, and perhaps gets a little bit lower when it gets down to this point. By the time it gets over the dam, it's back to kind of the natural system. So that's a good question. Just kind of talk the other there. Go one slide, please. Actually, we'll finish up here.
Yeah, those were averages showing.
Yep.
What kind of variability is there throughout
You can kind of see that in this one here for for things like dissolved oxygen and temperature. Well, temperature is obviously dependent on what time of year we're doing it. But dissolved oxygen is pretty stable right around that, just under saturation of 10 to 11. This plot here shows E. coli concentrations from 0 to 140 was about the max we saw. I think I showed this a year ago or so, but basically the blue bookends are the Rapid Creek upstream and downstream sides. The green sites in the middle are the lake sites going from upstream to downstream work. So this is each of our sampling events over for all of our sites. So we see, what we're trying to show here is there's actually this decreasing trend in bacteria concentrations from upstream to downstream. So kind of contrary to what we thought going into this in terms of waterfowl, duck crap going into the lake. It actually seems to be removing some of the bacteria because it's slowing the water down, dropping some of that stuff out against sunlight, and leaving the water for a longer period of time. But you can see some of the variability that you're asking me about, especially through the summer months. You see some higher bacteria concentrations. Through the fall, winter months, early spring, really comes down. It's a full summer jump here. We didn't see much of a summer jump here just because of the really high flows this last month. So. But that's really the story number one, is we've got this decreasing trend of bacteria from upstream to downstream. Same with total suspended solids. We're very low on this number anyway. You see all of our total suspended solids are less than 10 milligrams per liter, and that's relative to the standard of 53 milligrams per liter to maintain a trout fisheries. So we're looking at some very good water there. Let's jump to the next slide. And we can, I just kind of mentioned this, that this north side seemed to have the highest nutrient and chlorophyll populations or concentrations. Every time we're out there, that seemed to be an area with pretty high vegetation growth, a little decreased water clarity, that sort of thing. So I think that's an area that we're going to see the most benefit from when we talk about the dredging, is we're going to clear out a lot of that mucky stuff and the veg, all the things that cause those kind of issues on that side of the lake. So I think there's a lot of benefit over here. probably down in this corner. That seems to be a pretty stagnant area. Okay, next slide. And just to summarize kind of the story of what we've learned so far, we're seeing bacteria concentrations that are decreasing, a little contrary to what we previously thought. Waterfall probably not likely degrading the water quality as much. I just mentioned that number 235 versus, we had a maximum concentration of 140. See some seasonal trends. Nutrient concentrations are very low, very good water clarity. I mentioned we can see basically down to the bottom of the lake every time we're out there. So that'll be interesting to see how that changes once we start the dredging process. We start stirring up some of that sediment. We're going to see higher nutrient concentrations, and maybe water clarity is temporarily not quite as clear. And how might that affect the fisheries, that sort of thing. Next slide. Just have to show a picture of we were out there in October, and this is in front of the dam. And we actually watched this guy land this trout and pull it in, so I had to take a picture for him to prove that he actually caught it. But it was the biggest trout I've ever seen come out of Canyon Lake, so it's pretty impressive. Probably tastes like crap, but. So, just kind of an interesting story there. I see like the trout fish is doing pretty well there. Going into the final slide, talking about future plans, where to go from here. So as I mentioned, we've really kind of drug on this initial agreement as far as we could. We extended it out already, I think, 6 months from what we originally planned. So what we're proposing here right now is to basically start whenever the dredging begins, and from what we've heard from game fish and parks, that's probably mean it's fall. So if we say October 1 through September 30th, that aligns with our federal fiscal year, makes the bookkeeping a little easier. We'll plan to do at least 6 additional sampling visits. Again, kind of the schedule to be determined on when they start and how long it takes them to actually finish. I don't know if it's going to take more than a month or 2 for them to actually get on the water, so I could see us doing like 3 or 4 targeted around when they're actively stirring stuff up, and another 2 months after that. So in the packet, we got kind of the budget breakdown. We're requesting $26,000 from West Dakota. We're going to match that with $13,000 from our club.
I got a question on the funding part of it. Was the original study funded where we paid for 2/3 and you paid for 1/3?
Yep, same ratio. I think the original one was 40,000 versus 20,000, so for a total of 60,000 over 2 years.
James?
Are you willing to adjust the contract terms to just state when dredging begins and 1 year after? Because from what I'm getting from Game Fish and Parks, they might not start this fall.
Right.
That lake's in flood stage, and there's no sign of water stopping, and it would have to be drought from here till October, and hope that it doesn't freeze. And it's been cool all summer.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. I'm not really sure. I haven't communicated with the Game Fish Parks this last month on what they need for a stream flow to get down to.
It's going to be a lot, because they said the lake level is too high.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that, and that's kind of why I said we're not going to start until it begins, obviously. If we want to change we extended the last agreement. I figure we can do the same thing here. It's just
I would just adjust the whole contract to say begin when dredging starts. You know, if we agree to it, then you're not beholden, and you don't have to worry about your contract being initiated. And then just put the term date after it as 1 year of testing.
Yeah, I guess I'm fine with that. It's just a matter of how that's easy enough to write up or not. It's just a matter of we can always just do a no cost extension if we keep the same start date of October 1. If it's not actually October 1, then we just do a no cost extension to make the dates align on the
It might
contract.
not extend, it might be another year.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
So.
I have one question for
Sure.
you, and that's if there's a break in the data, like obviously we're going to have, how's that going to affect whatever it is that we're, the final product of what we're trying to discover?
Well, the biggest break right now would be So we sampled last month in June. Feasibly we could get out there in September if they were to start then. So that's when it came up to break. That actually lines up with a quarterly sampling plan, which is what you typically see in Rapid Creek. So that'll be fine. If it's more than 6 months, I would for sure want to go out there and get a sample that kind of bridge it.
And if we have another wet year, they're going to put it off another year.
Yeah.
What I don't want to do is just spend a lot of money. So what's the largest break in sampling that you could have? If they gave you a heads up, oh, we're going to start dredging on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Could you get there on Monday to sample to make sure that you have the clean data first before they do any digging through that muck?
Yeah, we can go with probably
Pretty quick.
within a week or a couple of days. It's that big to go. It's a local project.
So I'm with Bialotta on maybe if this is approved, we should have it set up so that it's dependent on the Game Fish and Parks Department doing what we paid $150,000 for.
I agree. And we've got a year and a half of baseline data. It's probably not that big a deal, but even if we had a gap of 1 year in between, just because we kind of saw a pretty consistent water quality over that year and a half span.
Ron?
I have a couple of questions, I guess. I'm not sure where to start. Maybe since we're talking about money, I'll start with the money.
Okay.
Is the 2/3, 1/3, is that the standard and only GS match for cooperators?
That's becoming our standard match. Yeah, there's some other we've got some other agreements, so if some of you are familiar with USGS many years ago, it was always used to be 50-50.
50/50.
Just due to cuts in appropriations and what our budgets are, we're not able to do 50-50 matches anymore. So it's becoming more standard to do a 2/3, and if there was a cooperative that had a long-standing agreement, we essentially try to build up towards that 1/3, 2/3 over time.
I guess I'd like to have you guys examine whether or not, as a long-term cooperator with you on various gauges, we can go towards a 50-50 on this one. Otherwise, I feel we're paying a considerable amount of staff labor time for a very limited sampling venue. You know, it's pretty compact. So I guess I'd like to have you think about that as one thing. The other thing is, how's the residence time of the lake related to the flows? You know, what's the relationship there? What's the curve? Because all these parameters are very directly influenced by, inflow in the residence time. So it's not surprising to me that things coming down Dark Canyon are very good. It's going to be very good through Canyon Lake because it's moving through there very rapidly.
I can help you with that. We paid for the study for the DNA testing, and we found out the Rapid Dog Park puts a lot of canine feces right above Canyon Lake. And you're wondering, if you go back to the map of when your most E. coli is, it's the summer months when people are out in the dog park.
But we haven't even busted any criteria on E. coli.
We did with the other study.
Okay, on this sampling, with the data that Galen showed, there was never a bust on it.
Yes.
For the summer records. And going back to the residence time, I think back to the early 90s, we did a dye study. Was that, I think, you're involved?
Yeah.
Kind of, that's pre-jetty,
Yeah.
with the jetty, and the residence time was on the order of 12 hours to a day, somewhere in that.
Yeah, less than a day.
So it's pretty quick coming through there.
So it's really running through there.
Yeah.
So that goes to my point about, the utility of some of these measures, other than if we're actually sampling sediments, because it is such a short residence time. I guess I'm questioning some of the value, other than we know the Canyon Lake is pretty darn clean, and that's all a good thing. In terms of the dredging impacts or potential impacts, Game and Fish is going to be obligated to, meet those dissolved solids criteria. They're going to have to monitor that, so that's going to be something they'll be required to do. So maybe there's some benefit there to what they'll have to do there. And the dredging is really a short-term activity. I look at it as esoteric information during the dredging, but you're not going to stop the dredging, for any kind of increase in phosphorus or nutrients that might be puffing up. There are no nutrient standards for that matter in South Dakota, so it's more of an interest factor. So I guess I'm just a little bit worried about the expenditure for what we're gonna get out of actionable items now that we know that Canyon Lake is in great shape. And we're gonna hopefully make it, even better in terms of various recreational activities with, selective deepening.
Right.
So I guess I need help on the long-term benefit and, what we're really gonna get out of the deal.
That didn't answer.
I guess, are you thinking of a scaled back sampling plan? Or
I'm just wondering, are there parameters that we really are maybe not necessarily need to be repeated since they went up 12%?
I think it's, we're not really using the drinking water plant, the Mountain View drinking water plant downstream that much anymore, but that's one example of, if of course, obviously not this year, they're not gonna be that water supply. But that was something that they talked about when they started this dredging. The idea of dredging is, once it started out, they weren't gonna be using that water treatment plant down below because there was concerns about stirring up sediments and poor water quality. So I think that everybody's pretty sensitive to, pretty aware that, yes, there's gonna be some temporary things going on, and if it's not monitored, I haven't heard of any details on game fishing parks being required to do the monitoring for it.
If you're operating in, the water like that, and with a core nationwide permit or whatever, you're gonna be obligated under the 401 cert to monitor for, at the very minimum, dissolved solids. I have some past history in those activities, and we monitored on a very regular basis. That even was, a point of contention back in the 90s when, the lake got drawn down the first time, and the city kind of got into a pickle with various kinds of logistics, and ended up with a, with a problem based on, dissolved solids and turbidity.
I think another intent of this is maybe this isn't going to be the only place the dredging is going to happen, but the efficient parts of the dredge, they're going to go out to the other lakes in the hills, other lakes that might have more problems with algae and sediment and things like that. So I think if we can provide some information, better information on kind of how the local systems respond to Black Hills, that might give them some information on what to expect for other lakes if it would affect water quality.
Potentially, but other lakes are not going to be, driven the same way in terms of almost immediate turnover in residence time. They're going to have a different kind of a factor. There's going to be sediment nutrient release that would be more impacted there. So, to me, some of the things that would be more interesting, for long-term applicability other places could be related to sediment nutrient release and sediment nutrient reductions as a result of some of the selective dredging that could be applied elsewhere. Canyon Lake, to me, is a really special circumstance, that isn't going to have that applicability elsewhere in the hills in particular, just from my perspective. So maybe rescoping, maybe re-examining a little bit. I'm just kind of wondering out loud. I don't have the answer.
Mr. Chairman, it seems like we're kind of delving into the question of funding. I mean, do we have a motion on the table for this, or?
That's what I was trying to get to.
We don't have a motion. We should have a motion.
That's what I'm trying to get to right now.
Yeah.
I motion that we table it till at least September. Hopefully they'll come back with a better price by then, and we'll know if dredging is going to take place at all.
See a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by Steve.
Good, that's fine.
Discussion of that motion.
I suggest we use the word postpone, not table.
I'm okay with that.
You okay, James?
I'll restate my motion is to postpone any voting until September.
Second, Chris, so the motion is to postpone to our September meeting. Any discussion?
I guess I've got a question for Galen, since we've got pertinent people in the room here. So I have a tough time looking at funding something like this, especially asking people like Ms. Maynard, who's in the room, who doesn't have safe water, asking her to help pay for a study that is interesting, but may not be necessary. How how would you respond to that? I mean, what does somebody like Ms. Maynard gain from paying for, helping to pay for a study like this?
Well, going back to the original kind of way to pitch this, it's about protecting Rapid Creek downstream. If you drive around Rapid Creek through the summer months here, you see everybody's out there, and it's funny with every park in Western Rapid City, from Canyon Lake down through wastewater treatment plant has people fishing in it, people jumping, people swimming in it. So what we're trying to do is learn something about this particular source of pollution, see if it's a problem. We're finding out that it's not a problem. So I'd expect this to be something that's, you know, we learned, we had a good story here. And, you know, something I mentioned is, or I showed in the first presentation of this is, how much did Rapid City Council talk about what managing waterfowl and duck feeding bans and how to clean off duck crap off the parking lots and the sidewalks? That was a very big issue. It's affected a lot of the residents of Rapid City, the visitors to this area. And I think what we're learning is that whatever they did seems to be working, but it's not really as big a problem as it used to be. So that's the kind of information we're trying to get, is it's protecting the resource of something that's used by everybody in Rapid City.
Any? Oh,
Question.
yeah, sure.
This study and the DNA study were before I was here, but my question is, did you look at their data to validate yours or vice versa? And would it make sense to coordinate if we did another DNA study?
The only real coordination is we tried to plan our sampling days together so we could kind of share some efforts, but as far as data overlap, there wasn't a whole lot of things. Just, you know, we look at the counts here and see that, yeah, the slide to show, but the bacteria counts are pretty low. They're below standards. But what we're not showing here is what percentage of that bacteria is from geese or dog or that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of opportunity for data overlap, but it's not like you need one to have the other one be useful. They're pretty independent.
Who seconded that?
Steve did. Seeing no more discussion, here's this discussion.
I'm kind of in both with Nate and Koth over here. I'm looking at this and I'm looking at how much we're paying for labor, staff labor, and everything. I'm wondering what we're getting at. I mean, everything you've shown here says everything's looking good. We know when you dredge it, you're going to mix some of that up. I'm not sure we're going to gain anything that we don't already know. It's short term. Everything's looking good. What are we gaining? We're going to spend $26,000 and we're going to say, okay, yeah, you're correct. We dredged it up, mixed it up a little bit, and then it came back down again.
I mean, that's the question you have to ponder for yourself. That's what we suspected would happen. I also suspected that E. coli concentrations would be higher at the downstream end than the upstream end, but that wasn't the case in what we found. So a lot of times what you think is going to happen doesn't always happen. So, you know, if we sample this for 6 months after the dredging, and let's say the nutrient concentrations go from low detection levels to now all of a sudden we have a nitrate problem in the creek. I mean, if that nitrate problem persists for 6 months, then is that a problem or not? You don't know something until you know it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
James?
I think I'd like to change my original motion back to table. Especially after hearing that 2 agencies that were given independent bids at full price shared data and we didn't get a discount.
Is there a second? Is there a second to that? Is that a motion?
Yep, that's a motion to table it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Nathan seconded. Discussion on that. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to table this item, basically, if I understood you right, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
No. Roll call.
Okay, motion to table. Harris,
No.
Ialana,
Yes.
Mack,
No.
Williams,
No.
Rollinger,
No.
Jovic,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Abstain.
Gerke,
No.
Code.
No.
Motion fails.
So go back to the
So
original
back to the
motion.
original motion to
Put
postpone it
postpone
to the
until-
September meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, I think we've,
It's already there.
I guess
It's already on there,
it was
isn't
already
it?
there.
Yeah, okay.
We'll go back to the original motion.
Okay.
Back to the original motion. Okay. Voting on that. Everybody understand it? All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? Motion carried. Thank you. September then.
And what's your threshold for the 2 votes? That's the one.
Pardon me?
What's your threshold, dollar threshold for when you need to have 2 votes?
It's
5,000?
5,000, yeah. Hasn't changed.
Doesn't change, okay.
Greater than 5,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay if I take
So that was item 12. Item 13, incorrect information on website for on-site wastewater treatment grant program. Instruct administration to correct based on policy manual. This item came up based on the application for a grant for septic tank, replacement of the septic tank. And there was a discussion, previous discussion by previous boards about putting a dollar value in there for the cost of the property, the value of the property being eligible for this grant program that we have for septic tanks. And Dan went back and I looked at my policy manual that I got from when I came on the board. It said nothing, there was no dollar value in there whatsoever.
Because they got mixed.
So Dan came back and he did some research on it. There was some discussion about it. But I don't think, it doesn't appear that there was ever a motion made to change the policy to include a dollar value for property that would be eligible for monies on the septic tank replacement program.
No, this is, are you saying it's incorrect that there should not be a dollar amount in there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I agree, because I know when we did go through that, we did change some items, and it was done in executive, it was done by committee, and then I thought it was voted on by the board. We had a couple ideas that were not voted on. One was because one of the items that comes up is they cannot sell their home for 3 years. However, there is nothing from us knowing if she sells her house for 3 years, which is why we talked about doing a reverse lien, which would automatically disappear after 3 years.
Yeah, we did discuss that.
But
We
it was
didn't do anything.
never enacted.
No, it was not. I guess this item particularly was dealing with that dollar amount.
Right, the dollar amount should not
And
be
so,
the income
Dan
guidelines. should
wanted
be
us to put it on the agenda, and I did agree that everybody needs to be aware of that. And it was on our webpage showing that dollar amount, so,
I move that we move to strike that from the webpage.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tom, any discussion?
Yeah, I have one more item.
Okay.
Also, when it came to that policy, we decided income was required to be turned in, but would not determine whether somebody qualified or not. Because income by itself does not show losses or debt. So it does not fully show the full picture of need.
Yeah, we discussed that too. I don't think we did anything about it.
I thought we did, but
I
it's
don't
been a
believe-
long time.
I don't
don't
believe-
remember.
I don't- I don't-
I wouldn't make a dollar bet that we did or not.
I don't think we did anything on that. You remember it, Nathan? Bob?
No, I don't remember taking any action on it.
I don't think so. So anyway, we got a motion to correct our website and take that out of there, basically.
Is it extracting the entire sentence? Or just the $1.25?
What would you like, Dan?
Well, what I would, that's really the main item. There's another slightly minor item. And I think we should go by the policies. In the policies, it says the grantee has to submit a letter that's notarized, which Holly has done.
Yes.
But that's not specified in there. So my recommendation to make those two consistent, those are the two items, so it's a wording thing. Then I don't think you need to necessarily to that detail now.
Does the policy show income requirements still?
Yes.
And the whole board, do we need a special meeting to do a policy change?
Good question.
Takes a 2/3 vote. That's not on the agenda.
Let's,
Put it on the agenda for next month.
okay, we can do that. Let's just,
Because we have that width or wording that we want to change so that it actually makes it into the change when we're, if we all 2/3 of this vote for it.
Well, could I, the document that describes the program on the website is not something that is voted on, beneficial. That's just a description of what's in the policy, so.
it's not correct.
I think you're okay just directing me to make it consistent without getting into the details.
Okay. Fair enough. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, sign. Motion carries. Thank you. And then we'll have that on the next meeting agenda. Okay.
Okay, so you want,
Do we want to do that? The next meeting is our budget meeting.
meeting's budget.
Should we do that in September?
We can still do that, it's just not gonna take this long.
As long as
Okay.
I'm not sure what we're suggesting.
to just strike the income requirements, income background required, but income requirement.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, related, item number 14, then, got a request site wastewater treatment grant from Marty Lundahl, represented by her sister Holly Melford. That's correct pronunciation. And just for your information, Dan and I had a chance to go out and look at the situation. And definitely, it was an issue, major issue. Margie did a good job of showing us around what the issue is. She's had people out looking at it. I don't know if you had a chance to look at her submittal. Thought it was really well put together, but personally, I believe we should do something as a board to help out the situation.
Yes, I would add that I watched the video and read your information and yes.
Swearing.
I would have probably swore a little more than that.
Several times, actually, even in the last week.
So, I mean, I think the need is obvious.
Steve?
I got a question for you, Dan. When I went down there, you'd said that we've done 3 of these. One was turned down, approved, but they were approved for more than the 2,000. What was the requirements you were using?
You have the additional material.
See that? It says 2,000, but the 2 that we did,
I attached it to the,
we paid more than this. Remember
Yeah, we're talking about the past.
right?
oh, the past.
The
Yeah,
one
the
that
past
we
ones.
did.
Yeah, so one of them, okay, depends on the income category. But one of them, we gave them, it takes a 2/3 vote if you go above $2,000. One of them, we gave 80% of the lowest bid, which came out to $5,000. Another one, we gave 30% lowest bid, which came out to $650.
So what reasoning did you guys use to determine whether it was 80 or 30, is what I'm asking? If we're gonna provide some help here.
That's the
I
reason,
don't think we know that, because we,
Nobody was on the board that did that
Yeah.
here.
well, the justification in
It was probably need.
in the less, they were extremely low income, and he was a veteran, he was 80 years old, and that
and that's kind of why I was asking as we
Okay.
look at this, because from my understanding, their income's less than 9 years.
Really on
Yes.
the board, it's
Right, okay.
And Marty is a veteran. She's a veteran, she's a disabled veteran. However, since she didn't lose her legs, her arms, falling, massive burns, she can't access any grant funds from the VA. So she does make less than $9,000 a year, so she's considered below 80% median. And her legs are made of metal. She had massive cancer. She's survived the diagnosis by 4 years now. And the cancer basically ate away the calcium to her legs, and so they installed metal in her legs. So she's ambitorily challenged. And again, we went to the VA to obtain assistance. They could not give us any because these required that we use lower extremities, upper extremities, deep lines, or third-degree burns. So this is only access to any funding to create the septic system. And I did get an approval letter by the state today.
I got a copy of it.
Yeah, and I brought some more copies if you want to pass it down. And they approved installing this. We projected installing it in the front and the side yard, which is the only place it can be installed because it's not a large square footage area. The property isn't enough in the backyard. The system has to be 1,000 square feet is what they projected in the state. The state came out with a recommendation instead of the 210 linear feet to go up to 200. So we've added a little bit more infiltrators in there and rock to do a reduction on this property. It has to be done reduction style in order to keep the need to supply 600 gallons of water or field out across the field. And that's what the letter from the state said today. And he printed that off just before I got to the meeting. So he's passed it other than that. And then he made the lines. The original plans had the lines at 36 feet and some 40. He wants to see them all the same length so that even filtration into the ground and evaporation into the air.
But was this plan to include that, because the septic tank you were suggesting, the basically oversized.
The septic tank I already put on a bill pay system, so that wasn't included.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I was able to get that on a bill, so I'm making payments on that one.
Okay.
This is just for installing an input and heat rock underneath needed to do a reduction on the square footage of the field down to almost 40%.
I'd like
it
it.
would be laid in the side of the front yard.
It's on, this site is on a slope, it's a kind of a tough site.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that 80% of the lowest bid, which would be $5,200.
Okay, motion was made to approve a grant of $5,200 based on 80% of the low bid. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it, but I'd also send a substitute to more than 5. So we
Can
want
I-
2 votes.
Can I make
Oh,
a
That's what I was gonna say.
And I'm
Okay.
okay with that.
Okay, so you're gonna change your vote so it's 5,000? Okay, $5,000, so we'll do 2 votes. So the motion and the second by Ron, if you go 80% or $5,000 basically.
Okay, thank you.
So now discussion. Nathan?
So I also watched the videos, and in the videos, there was at least 2 instances to the need to sue somebody.
Yeah,
Did you
the guy
understand
that
that?
owned this property left it vacant for 3 years. It's on the market for 3 years. The septic tank he completely emptied. And we had the first backflow, it was actually through the washing machine, and it was the minute we turned on the water. The backflow came into the building, but it was gray water for the tub. So I had a guy come out and snake it. There was a ball of dryer in there. So he may have stuck that in there so that the tank didn't fill up, so that we wouldn't have detected the problem with the tank. dropped into the tank, and hence that was the first time the tank received any water because it was completely empty. I did attempt to bring in action, but he's represented by counsel. This isn't a prudent case, so it's not a contingency case. We are represented in pro se, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere because we're represented by counsel. And it's very difficult to get a judge to award in your favor when they're represented by counsel, frankly, because judges pro se litigants.
So you have an ongoing legal action?
We just opened it, but nothing's happened with it. He is represented by counsel. He filed the false property report.
I have a substitute motion that we postpone this until after we learn what happens with the legal.
I really can't do that. I have to have the septic sink now. And litigation can take years and years and years.
Did you sue him in small claims court?
No, I sued him in a upper level court, but it took years. So if you want to make this on me refunding the commission, I can do that, but litigation takes years, and we might be cut out of the litigation altogether because we're in pro se. We can't afford an attorney.
To me, it sounds like your case is probably something that we awarded to you. If you had somebody that didn't disclose something to you, then in my mind, that's probably a winner.
Well, if the law was perfect, that would be.
Yeah, I understand.
But the
There's
law
always
is
unknowns.
extremely imperfect.
Yep.
And we've got to have a septic system now. So if you wanted to frame that by saying, if I win the lawsuit, then I'll have to pay the agency back the thing. But I've got to have this septic system in now. We just opened this up, and it takes years to litigate something. And quite frankly, I tell you, having been in the legal system before, if you're unrepresented, you've got 80% against you right there. Because you're not pro se litigants.
Why didn't you sue in the small claims? I mean, this is below the small claims threshold.
Because, well, small claims is $12,000. It's limited to $12,000 in this state. You don't get any punitives. I mean, this is deserving of punitives as far as I'm concerned. Because he flat out lied in his properties. Yes.
How much damage was caused to the home as well?
The home, probably around $25,000 today.
It's not very livable now, is it?
No, it's not livable. In fact, I'm the only one there because there's mold everywhere in the home. I'm just speaking realities, because if you've been in this, and I've been before judges, and they do not like pro se litigants.
And I understand that, and I sympathize with your situation. You're asking taxpayers to pay for improvements to your property when it sounds like the correct avenue here is for you to get a judgment against the person that you bought it from. That's where the reimbursement should come from, not from taxpayers.
I understand that. So if you want to tag this saying that if I win the case, I have to pay the grant back, that's one thing. Because it can take years, and I've got to have a septic system. We have no other resources.
I would not tag it with the words of winning the case. Just noting the case does not mean you're getting paid. I've won many a case and never been paid, I can tell you.
I want to make a follow-up comment there. Is that basically what you're looking for is what I would call gap funding from taxpayers to fund you today until you get your judgment against against the person that you bought the
If I
property
get a
from.
judgment.
And again, from my perspective, I wouldn't have to ask the question, is that appropriate? Is it appropriate for taxpayers to give you gap funding to get you whole, when it wasn't the taxpayers that did this?
Well, my response to that would be if I win a judgment, if I agree to pay you back, then it won't be considered a gap funding theory. It's considered a special needs household.
Could you get a loan to put this system in?
We've already gotten the septic tank. That's the most I could do. I can't do anything else.
Was that separate from the Hills construction bid? That,
The Hills construction bid, that was the lowest bid.
does that include the tank or just the dirt work?
No, he didn't include a lot of, in fact, he amended the application and the lowest bid that came in on the amended application doing everything was $9,000. It wasn't $6,500. $6,500 didn't include a lot of things, and he didn't even come up and look at the property. It was attached to, I think the affidavit that I built. It was that, because he came in with the lowest bid. And none of them included the septic tank, and it was $9,000. And it was attached to the affidavit.
Let's see, we have a motion on the floor for 5,000.
No, there's a substitute motion on the floor.
Substitute motion, that's the second.
Motion is for, oh, that was your substitute.
I would postpone, my substitute motion was to postpone consideration till we hear the results of the litigation.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? No, so it's not.
Back to original motion.
So guys, for lack of a second, substitute.
Back to original.
Back to the original motion to grant $5,000 for you. We haven't voted on it. I'm just kind of
One more
reviewing.
question. What was the cost of, okay, so Grover Construction is the lowest bid
Yes,
now?
the actual lowest bid, the $6,500 didn't include it.
Right. And I see it's still at $9,000, does not include the septic tank. Did you agree?
None of them included the septic tank.
And what was the cost of the tank?
The cost of the septic tank was $3,500.
And where was that purchased, or was that precast?
Precast.
JD Precast.
That's what I was.
Yeah, JD Precast.
Yeah, that price, that's what I was.
All right. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion indicate by
Aye.
opposed, same sign.
Nay.
One no from Nathan. Motion carried. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
Time for a break. Take care.
Man, I swear to God, you listen to me one time a night.
Yeah, it was a critical.